Welcome to this Thursday edition of Bury Your Bookie. I'm Jeff DeForest, joined as always on these Thursdays and Monday as well by one of my favorites here to talk about degenerate gambling and any kind of degenerate activity, the great Mike Jones, who spent a lot of time in Las Vegas, a lot of time on the sidelines with Bill Parcells, and has been following sports since he was an embryo, and I believe he made his first bet at 3 years old. Mike, welcome to the program. How are you, my friend? I always like it when somebody's doing some business right up until post time for the show. And then I'm not sure. Was that a favorable hang-up or what was?
Yeah,
Okay.
just finding out a little bit that ESPN Bet now and Penn have separated, and it looks like DraftKings is a new sponsor of ESPN, which puts them, tries to give DraftKings a little boost toward possibly catching FanDuel. I think it's a good move for DraftKings, and I think if you're a shareholder of DraftKings, which is trading, I think at 27, which is a year low, I think it's a good boost. So DraftKings could be a buy today.
Are they not somehow related at this point? I thought that they
Yeah,
were on the same wavelength. No?
yeah, they're kind of, but they're pretty dominant in the industry. They got 75 roughly percent of all the volume. So Penn was struggling a little bit. Made the deal with Portnoy for Barstool, and then we heard about that fleecing of Penn by Dave Portnoy, and then now they go into ESPN, and basically the ESPN didn't really want Portnoy as a part of their platform, and that's how that deal came about. Now you have all this where. I find it to be very interesting. I just think that I've talked to people who are familiar with some people at DraftKings, and they're looking to make moves. They just get bigger market in their name. So I guess to improve stock price is what they're doing. So this is a move that does it. Now Circa, I was listening to this through VSiN. Circa doesn't feel it's any kind of threat to their business, and they're going to keep doing their little deals and run their pools and slowly creep up in different states and put their product out there to compete. But their long term isn't trying to be number one yet. So they're not threatened at all. They asked if it was a threat to them, and they said no. So
happy with their piece of the pie.
Yeah, right.
High rollers come in there. They got that beautiful theater. Have you been to that theater that they have?
Yeah.
The sports book?
Yeah, the outdoor, the pool with the pool and all that. Yeah, I have been. It's great.
Yeah, we were at, I guess, the indoor version. Do they have two different
Yeah,
rooms?
yeah, the indoor. Yeah, there's an outdoor where the pool party kind of betting, and you get big screens and you can see it from almost anywhere.
Yeah.
Platform, a big event type thing, and then the inside sports book's pretty intense. All good with a lot of chairs, and you can see it from everywhere. And even outside the book, you get a good look at what's going on. So it's a lot of fun to go to Circa. They did a great job to take over. They want to be the big sports book in town, and doing a great job of it.
The evolution of that downtown area certainly is interesting thing to view it over the years. One time you just went down there to get cheap food and play dollar blackjack. Wasn't exactly the kind of crowd that you would find maybe at the ballroom at Mar-a-Lago, but and now it's packed. They did a great job of sort of reviving the whole idea that this was a destination choice.
Just the circa millions contest, right? Is 18. A lot of people go into that 2,000-3,000 now. You have the Circa Survivor, which is 18,000 people to get all that money, and so each year that the more and more players come in, they figured out that instead of having to go out there and re-sign up and make an appearance, now you can do it through your proxy, which means you can stay home in state of Michigan or Florida or wherever you're from, and make your bets and give it to the proxy. So they're making it convenient. Like the industry's making its moves here and there, just like the industry last night. If you were a live bettor, you had all sorts of fun. You have Oklahoma City down 22 to my Portland Trailblazers, up 22 in Portland. Cut it to 8 at halftime, and Portland ends up getting a win, knocking Oklahoma City from the unbeaten streak. You have an easy live bet, right, with the Denver, because Bam Adebayo is not coming back. So if you have Denver -9 at the game, and then you get the Heat plus 10.5 at halftime, you're seeing the game bounce up, no Bam, and yet the Heat cut it to 10. So you middle that game if you took a halftime in the front end, and live betting, you got popped a little bit because the lines are 12.5, 13. Throughout, thinking that without Bam, that Jokic and company are going to pull away, but yet the Heat found a way to somehow keep it close. And then you have the late game with the Lakers, which was fascinating. Lakers are 2.5 favorite, open up thinking everybody's going to play. Reeves gets an outs out. So San Antonio goes to a small favorite. The game ends up going off at Pick'em. And now you have an unbelievable situation where San Antonio's up 6 or 8, and Wembanyama fouls out of the game. and then you get it all the way down to a 0.4 with a 2-shot down 2 with 0.4 to go, thinking Lakers are a lock, and then they foul a guy going for a tip-in with 0.4 on the clock, and he misses the 2 free throws, and so you lose anyway with that, and you get the Lakers get the win, but you're getting the middle because if you took the 2.5 and then waited for it to flip, all that happened. So a lot of gambling perspective, a little bit to throw out the NBA last night, how tough it is and how these guys handicap the odds makers are right on top of this stuff. But very interesting night in the NBA.
Yeah, even without Adebayo, who had 2 points before he left in the first quarter. You're looking at Jokic and his line, which was spectacular. What did he have? He had 33, 15, and 16. 33, 15 rebounds, 16 assists. And all that being said, you still needed a couple of Jamal Murray free throws at the end of the game if you were back in Denver to cover. And the Heat never beat Denver. I think they've lost 11 straight in the regular season going back to 2016. Their only win against Denver in that span was in Game 2 of the 2023 playoffs when they somehow survived against the Boston Celtics and made it into the NBA Finals, only to lose in 5 games to a superior Denver team. But they never beat the Denver Broncos. But if you were laying 9 points with Denver, it certainly got a little dicey there at the end of the ballgame.
Yeah.
In addition to that whole business with the end game of the Lakers and their contest with San Antonio, even after once the first free throw was missed, you figured, okay, the game is iced. That seldom works, and it was like 0.2 of a second to go, where the shooter is going to deliberately miss the second free throw. Not enough time for a guy to even grab the ball and take a shot. But the way that he missed it, it seemed like even though he was deliberately attempting to miss the free throw, it bounced around the rim, and a Spur got his hand on the ball and had another attempt, not just one, but I believe 2 attempts at a tip-in, which both went awry. And so the Lakers ended up prevailing by 2 points in that ball game to move to 7-2, and that's happened without LeBron James being in the lineup. All right, that was interesting stuff in the NBA last night. We do have Week 10 coming up in the NFL. And it begins tonight with the Broncos and the Raiders. 9 points. Is that too much to lay? I know no one has followed the Raiders more closely than you. I guess this gets back to your Las Vegas ties.
Yeah.
Geno Smith, we know, is capable. We thought maybe Pete Carroll might be somebody that could advance the cause of the Raiders, but they've been subpar and so-so at best. I don't know that they're ever going to get it together. They got rid of Jacoby Myers, and what, they trade him, Jacoby Myers?
They did. They had a 4 and a 6 from Jacksonville. They traded him this week. That's correct.
So that was their number one receiver. Where does that leave you in terms of thinking about tonight's game and laying 9 points with the Broncos, who don't really blow anybody out? But the game is in Denver at Mile High, and the Raiders coming off a high scoring output, but a loss nonetheless. So what do you think, Mike Jones? How do we start out week number 10?
I find this to be a very interesting scenario here. You got the line is dropping, but the money's on Denver. So what is that telling you if you're out there? It's saying that the houses out west seem to like the Raiders a little bit, or they're anticipating by kick tonight that they're going to get the Las Vegas local money that's going to pound in on it. But I found it fascinating that, you haven't, the trade of Myers, you have the injuries now. The guys that I follow that are pretty good and understand this, although I had a bad week last week, we're all over Denver. And then this morning I'm listening to guys that are loving the Raiders, just thinking it's too many points on the road. And this has been a rivalry game going back decades. This great division, that West is great division stuff in the AFC West. And, I just look at it like, what do you see here? Too many points on a Thursday night game. But it's a short flight, hour and a half flight, so it's not a big travel for the Las Vegas to Denver. I've taken that flight many times, so I know it. It's like, so it's not an easy, it's not going to be hard on the Raiders. And, just the disheartening win. And this is kind of one of these things. If you like Pete Carroll, you're playing out there, laying it on the line. They had a very frustrating win. I thought the field goal at halftime by Little of 68 yards kind of catapulted, gave the Jags a little momentum going into the half and kept that game going. But the Lakers showed heart, kept coming back when the Jags would take the lead, made it a great game, got it to overtime and went for 2 at the end, and they were 2-point conversion away from a win. A lot of points. I just don't like it, but I'm surprised that my guys are the tough laying favorites are all over Denver. So this is a game that I probably like under more than anything else.
All right.
42.
I was reading a little handicapping advice column here from Action Sports, or the New York Post Action page. We did get a winner from your boy Kazarian the other day, as he was all over Akron against UMass, calling for the blowout. Easily covered the 10.5. I think they won by 30 something. Different guy making a proposition bet here named Dylan Svoboda, who and I always loved the logic in here. I used to follow this when it was the Las Vegas Sports Information Network, the Brent Musburger thing,
Sure.
VSIN, Vegas Sports Information Network, and routinely I would pick up the paper and review what the handicapper had to say, and you would have this pristine, brilliant logic laid out for about 10 paragraphs, only to stiff you with yet another loser. And it was amazing to me how consistently they were losing on these plays after just astute analysis, the kind of analysis that you would think only the most sophisticated of mathematicians could be able to interpret. But this guy makes a pretty strong case for a prop bet, Trey Tucker, based on the Jacoby Myers trade, saying that Tucker was getting about 4 catches a game when he was the number 2 receiver for Geno Smith. And now that Myers is no longer going to be the focal point of the passing game, of course, they have the great tight end there, Bowers, and so he's going to be a primary target. But also, you would imagine that Sean Payton's aware of that. They try to take him away. So this guy makes a brilliant case for Trey Tucker to get more than 4.5 catches in the game, to get 5 catches or more, and that's plus 160. And figuring that if he does catch 5 balls, he's going to have at least 40 yards. So he's got Trey Tucker because of the fact that he now is going to become a primary target for Geno, exceeding these numbers, 4.5 catches, and I think it's 40.5 yards in receiving. And it all gets back to our whole thing about how nobody bets sides anymore. That this is where people are looking at breakdowns in terms of degenerate analysis. I don't know. What do you think about that?
Let's rip it apart. So the number one thing you're going to think that the Raiders have to do to stay in the game is run the football.
Yeah.
At take time of possession. So you got to figure they're going to try to get Gentry going. The next problem the Raiders have is their offensive line has struggled most of the year, and this is an elite pass rush that they're going up against. But to Tucker's defense, Patrick Surtain's out. If he's going to be the focal point, number one receiver, is going to get top corner billing from the other side that might follow him around the field. The other thing is they're a different team with Blake Bowers in the lineup, and so just looking at that, you could see how he even though he's double, triple coverage, you can see Geno consistently looks for him. They also have another tight end in Mayer who gets a lot of focus too. I just look at it like if it's a defensive battle, I don't like to take overs on these props, thinking that where the Raiders are going to get points from and how they're going to do it. But if they do get behind in the game, it favors that prop. So it's not one that I could eliminate. I don't think I would be on it. But I see the point in what the information he's given out to say, okay, that's it. I just don't know that I think that this is a game if the Raiders stay in it, Gentry gets 90 to 100 yards.
All right, makes some sense. So you're a contrarian on that theory that this is going to be easy money on Trey Tucker getting 5 catches and 41 yards in a ball game. We looked at a lot of stuff yesterday on a show we did called Break the Bank, kind of a extrapolation on Bury Your Bookie. I guess either situation is a good one, a favorable one to be in if you're the bettor. And we're hoping that we can accomplish both for you, whether you're betting with a bookie or you happen to be expanding a bankroll on some app somewhere. You had a couple of picks in the college ranks, so let's revisit a couple of those, Mike Jones. You were very, very solid on a couple of games.
Yeah, real quick, it's the Texas Tech. I mean, last Saturday night, I was fascinated by how many points that Cincinnati was getting. Cincinnati's been a good cover team this year, and they end up getting 8.5, 9.5, 10. That went off some 11s out there, and I'm like, why is this line inflated? And then he watched the game, and Utah jumps out to a 7-0 lead, and then Cincinnati has success running football, makes it 7-7. As I'm flipping back, I turn back, and before the end of the first quarter, it's 14-7. You think, wow, this is going to be a shootout. I kind of like having big points in a shootout, like a big number. Besides Cincinnati, and then all of a sudden, Cincinnati's quarterback really started to struggle, and the frustration was showing on his face, and they went down. I think they were down 10 or whatever at the half, maybe 17 at the half, and it never looked back, and they end up losing 45-14. It just made me think that, boy, the odds makers are right on top of that, and I listened to a lot of handicappers that like the Bengals, including the guys on ESPN, including Portnoy. I like the Bengals. I like the Bearcats, I should say. And I just think about this is another same thing. When you look at BYU getting 10 points, like, why are they? Then you hunt BYU down, and they've had really good wins. Obviously you're undefeated, you're doing something right. But I don't know that the over impressive wins like that Texas Tech had with the dominance of Utah on the road, and they've seemed to be there. And I really like what they've got in the transfer portal. I like their players. I like what their coaches are doing. The quarterback plays well. And this is their first home game in a while against a high-end competition. I think the fan base is going to be ready. They have a chance to get to the Big Ten championship. They're already sitting there I know both teams are actually in the playoff after what ESPN unraveled on Tuesday. But I look at that. This is very similar to what I saw in Utah and Cincinnati last week. Two good teams going at it. And I think Texas Tech bounces BYU from the ranks and maybe does a little punching in the mouth, if I know what I kind of like to say.
All right.
That's one that I really think that I'm pretty strong on.
I know, and you had a solid opinion on another game too in the college ranks.
Yeah, just you put them out there for me to dig into, and I'm sitting there thinking, LSU is getting 10, and I'll lump another game into this too, if I can, and I really like this the other side of this, but now I'm going to flip it, so I'm going to play a little devil's advocate to all this. So Georgia gets a freakish cover, Florida gets a freakish cover on Saturday. Billy Gonzalez's first game as interim head coach. Gets time to prepare for that and loses 24-20. But Florida was pretty competitive throughout that game, getting 7. They weren't really out of the game at any point. And I look at this LSU thing that maybe it's a relief for these kids in the system to get rid of Brian Kelly and now the AD and all that's happening. Yes, the governor jumped in on this, which I found fascinatingly weird. But it was like, I'm kind of looking at this game going, this is the rival game. The pressure's more on Alabama. They have to stay in tight, their fan base, all that stuff, expecting more after a disappointing year. They're ranked as a home game. They're going to maybe thinking about the SEC championship game. Not that they probably are, just thinking it could drift a little bit, thinking LSU's not the team that they thought they were going to be. But LSU's got talent. They probably at the start of the season had the better quarterback. Maybe getting the mention of getting rid of Brian Kelly might be kind of some release for these kids to say we don't have that pressure being screamed and yelled at and an animated coach that seems like, argues with everybody and was tough to get around. I heard some stories about him that, some certain decisions were made when he didn't even show up to meetings in the offseason that were football decisions that the head coach normally would be at. So maybe that distraction might help LSU. So I kind of lean LSU plus 10. I'll be watching the line to see where it ends up, watching injuries. But I kind of think LSU shows up and gives Alabama all they want.
It's addition by subtraction. They get rid of Brian Kelly. You could sense there was something up there with Brian Kelly the whole season.
Yeah, and the other game the other game that's fascinating too, Jeff, is why is Vanderbilt only given 6.5 to Auburn? So Auburn lets go of their coach.
Yeah,
you freeze, and the report comes out that Auburn was mad about all the time he spent on the golf course. So that goes into now. I'm going to play conspiracy theory, which I kind of like to do. And
I guess that eliminates Steve Spurrier from coming in as the new coach.
Well, Spurrier, we can get to that too. But here's where I go with this. That line seems awful short to me. I thought Vanderbilt would be 9.5, 10 after Auburn has a tough loss last week to Kentucky. That line being 6.5 is telling me maybe I'm onto something with this coaching freeze. That get rid of these coaches that don't seem to be focused. And to your point, are they setting all this up to get this money? Like if all of a sudden you freeze and Brian Kelly are sitting there realizing kids are not the same, the transfer portal is ruining football. These are veteran coaches who've had jobs all over the country. And now all of a sudden you're sitting there looking at this going, maybe these are kids in the SEC are tougher to coach. So let me just get myself fired, go play golf, miss meetings, go do whatever you can, and do what Jeff DeForest says the greatest job in the world, to be a fighting college football coach. Yep. So I'm starting to think as all these guys get out, are they orchestrating it? I mean, it's a conspiracy theory, like who wants to get fired from a job and do it? But if you're going to get paid that kind of money and relieve all that pressure and stress that you don't have to deal with the boosters and everybody in the offices and all the student bodies and all that stuff that you deal with, maybe so. So why it happens here? Does Auburn give Vanderbilt all they want? Maybe they do. So I'm going to go and take a little small shot at Auburn also.
That was my dream in my radio career mostly. Was to sign a guaranteed 5-year contract and get fired on the first day. There would be nothing that would be more satisfying. I think it's like $185 million in buyouts that have been paid out to various fired college football coaches. No better job. If the worst job in all of sports is being the teaser horse on a stud farm, the best job in all of sports is being a failed college football coach. And what's interesting is all the same names resurface again. Although, are you buying any of these rumors? Which it's not. It's kind of like the Bill Cowher thing, where every time an NFL job popped open, even though Cowher had been out of coaching for like 20 years and hadn't really done anything, in my opinion, to distinguish himself as a broadcaster. I don't know that he had anything particularly significant to say. Decent enough guy, well respected, of course. You know that he had an intuitive knowledge about what to do in the NFL, but I don't think he really portrayed any of that or related that much of that while he was on CBS and their pregame shows and halftime shows. But every job that opened up was, oh, well, you know what, Bill Cowher could be a candidate. They're saying that now about Nick Saban. Do you see Saban coming back to the college ranks at any time? It seems like he's in a pretty soft spot right now.
Man, I tell you what, there'd be something. I put this out before Brian Dable was going to get hired. I thought Nick Saban was a candidate for the Giant job. And, you know, I look at it like, would he want to deal with this in college now? Or he had the most elite job that you could have.
Yeah.
I listened to him on a certain podcast say that he had an offer. His agent asked him, do you want to be Vince Lombardi or Bear Bryant? He said Bear Bryant. So he went right back to Alabama and said, go after he left Miami. So his passion probably is college football because he wants to help out student athletes. But I go back to that conversation that Miss Terry, his lovely wife, said when she said, what are we doing this for when all these mothers are in there waiting for their check instead of worried about what the kid education and what kind of man your son's going to be with Alabama tutoring. And I just think he'd be crazy to come back to do this. I think he's got a great gig at ESPN. He could out there talk about it, critique it. He's loyal to all his assistants that he's had. If you watch him pick games and, all he favors a lot of his
yeah.
So, I just would be surprised, but the money talks. And if he misses it and Miss Terry misses it and they can go to an area in the country where they're both happy, nothing would surprise me now. And what kind of deal does he get? Does he get $200 million for a 10-year deal and coach into his 80s? And who knows? The way these guys throw around money now, just to get Saban there, does he bring – remember this, too, about Nick Saban, which I heard that was an amazing, amazing point. He was the number one CEO for profit in the country at what time is Alabama. For what his salary was and for what he was making for the university, he was the number one CEO in the country. So if that's a kind of something that you could look at, if if he goes to somewhere that's not drawing, say Mississippi State or somewhere where maybe they're having issues or whatever, and all of a sudden here comes the swag, here comes Mississippi State's program, it all changes. What kind of money does he create? He probably pays his salary. So that's the thing that I think is you just can't. Nothing will surprise me if it happens. But, boy, the money's going to be money that we never would expect. Maybe Ohtani money.
Yeah. Although I can't even imagine that he's hurting for cash. He's in every commercial. The only thing he's not selling, I believe, is Car Shield.
Yeah.
Which is maybe just too unbelievable for him to be a participant in because it's hard to imagine that Ice-T with that garage full of Bentleys, Rolls Royces, and expensive cars is actually insuring those vehicles with Car Shield. Just in case they have some kind of mechanical breakdown when it looks like he never takes them out of the garage. So I can't imagine. I bet Saban's got to be just raking it in from all of these commercials that he's doing. So
yes. And he's popular.
Kind of a weird thing to go back into college football, unless he just really loves it.
That's what I think. I think, Jeff, it's turned from us. I'll use your term, geezers or Caesars. I think it's a young man's game now. I think that a lot of it has to figure out a way to get along. We watch Mike McDaniel down here wearing his capri pants and walking around and trying to act like, he's a player and with all that. And that didn't fly when I was with the Giants. There was a difference. The front office was separate. The coaching staff was separate. The equipment and training was separate from the players. But now it seems like it's all in one unity. I get fascinated when every time a team's down 28-0 and they get a pick and 20 guys run into the end zone to show up and pick down 28-0. It's a different world today, and I don't know that guys our age can fit in because we're so disciplined to what we grew up at, which we thought was a better era to teach, coach, learn the game fundamentally sound. I mean, you've heard me go off on baseball. Watching Barker get picked off second base in Game 6 of the World Series when second and third are one out, when he can't go anywhere if the ball's caught, right? I mean, he's not going anywhere. He's going to get the third if the guy caught by the time he gets it. But the ball's high, It's an eye level for Hernandez. There's no way he couldn't have seen it. He's past halfway, and he gets doubled off. I mean, it's just like that's the thing. Like, and you're sitting in a dugout, and if you're Billy Martin, he's kicking you. He's kicking Barger. You know what I mean? It's like it's a different world. So, do you want to, when you have your life organized and it's okay to dip back in? You have to have a little bit of a crazy button in your head to do it. But by the same token, nothing will surprise me because my uncle was the same way. My uncle was a prominent high school football coach in New Jersey, a great one. Everybody knew him. All the college coaches. He knew Paterno, he knew Bryant. And he retired, and Jim Garrett, Jason Garrett's dad, gave the speech at his retirement dinner. And he looked at all of us and said, what are we all doing here? Don't we realize Jack's going to be coaching in a year anyway? And it's what happened. So this guy at 70 years old couldn't stay away, didn't want to be home at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, wanted to be on a football field teaching and breeding kids. And that's what I also see in some of these people, that they're lifers. Can they give it up? So that's a fun situation to talk about.
All right, before we give it up here on this edition of Bury Your Bookie, a couple of games in the pros. We were both handicapping on another show. The Steelers against the Chargers, kind of an interesting proposition here because you're thinking off the top of your head, yeah, Chargers at home, they should prevail. But are they really at home when the Chargers play at SoFi? Yeah. And the Steelers making a nice account of themselves last week, although the game got tight with the Colts. They did beat the team that had the best record in the NFL. They're certainly not out of any game. You don't know what Aaron Rodgers is going to do week to week. Not that he's radically inconsistent, but he's capable of putting one on the opposition. What do you think about that game? 3 points. I know we both agreed yesterday that the Steelers with the 3 points probably was the play. Have you slept on that and thought about it, or
slept on it, thought about it, heard a real pitch on the Chargers, why the Chargers are going to win that game. Basically everybody bringing up the fact you had 6 turnovers, you only won by 7 points, but that game was pretty much out of control in the third quarter when you saw that they were struggling. But the Colts are 7-1 at that point for a reason. They're good. I'm gonna go a little lean toward a different game though. I'm gonna stick with my Steelers, but I'm gonna give you one more here that we didn't talk about yesterday. Let's stay right here in Miami. So I just did some research and found out that after the Chiefs win with Buffalo in the regular season, they're 3-0 in the last 3, and average wins are over 17 points a game. So instead of it being a letdown factor that you feel like you're getting, you're going to get into a situation where this team carries the momentum. And they've always been in first place at this time in the last few years. Now they're not. So I feel that this is a must-win game for them. I feel they see the sense of urgency. I feel the Dolphins were sellouts. I watched some tape on Tua last week. It was pretty rough to watch him throwing the ball away, not to take hits and going down. And if this Buffalo pass rush, which is a lot better than the Baltimore pass rush, gets after him, what really happens here? I think this could get away from Miami quick. So I'm going to take Buffalo in this spot.
All right, laying the points there, which looks like it's on the climb because I saw it at 9 yesterday, 9.5 now in my ledger here in the New York Post, which is yesterday's news tomorrow. You're more updated on this than I am. But, you're laying almost double digits on the road with the Buffalo Bills. Mike Jones not inclined to do that sort of thing. But
it's a different world today, Jeff, and that's notoriously a bad play. You don't lay double more than a touchdown on the road in the league. It's probably a 40% win over the last decade or so. But it just seems like injuries or bug is hitting people. The players get disenchanted. They no chance for the playoffs. And I see the same thing with the Commanders. I think with all those injuries, they're losing a quarterback at 3-6 with all that expectation to go in a championship game. I think Detroit bounces back like Dan Campbell after a loss. Seems to be very effective in covering the spread. And I know that's a big number. It's opened up 3 when they didn't see the injuries. Now it's 8.5, 9. I think Detroit goes in and puts a 2 Washington this week too. So it's 2 road favorites we don't normally like. And then if you add a 3-team teaser for 7-point teaser, which pays plus money, we'll throw Denver in there and pull all those numbers down under 2. So there's a little play for you.
All right, very good. Mike Jones, always a pleasure, my friend. I know you have business to conduct, and so do we, and you guys have to get busy going about your day and making the wagers, all kinds of stuff. I mean, a giant slate with college football we didn't really touch on. The NHL is going. I know, Mike, you like to dabble in betting some pucks, college basketball, the NBA. A lot of stuff out there for the degenerate to get involved in. And, of course, you can always make 8 million prop bets. So, Mike, always a pleasure. People, thanks so much for tuning in. We'll do it again tomorrow with the professor. For Mike Jones, I'm Jeff DeForest. We'll catch you on the next edition of Bury Your Bookie.